Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with Season 7, Episode 4, Unfinished Business of the Clone Wars. Trust placed in another is trust earned. Interesting quote, but it's kind of interesting too, because at first glance at that quote, you're looking at it and you're thinking, oh, right, so, you should just trust another blindly. Actually, no. The whole point of that is that trusting someone else is hard, and the other person is the one doing the earning, not you. Obviously, there's some relevance to that for this particular episode, but I find that doubly interesting because there's another layer to that. Obviously, is Echo really a traitor? Is he going to betray us? Is he secretly working for the Separatists? Is he the real Darth Vader? We have to know. No, of course not. The real answer there is that kind of trust is the sort of thing this whole episode lives and breathes. This whole arc actually has. The Bad Batch and their trust in another. Rex and his ability to trust within his own clones, and then eventually trusting the Bad Batch, who trust him in return. Anakin, who has that immediate trust with Rex to reveal the truth about Padme, and of course, their connection with Obi-Wan. There's all kinds of how much trust has been given to specific entities throughout the course of this arc. It's probably one of the dominant themes of the entire arc. Trust. So, interesting directions there. Now, Hazardous mentioned this last time, and I do want to bring this up, because even in armor, Echo just looks wrong. Obviously, now he's got the droid arm. The droid USB arm, which, yeah. And, of course, his eyes are just wrong. I don't know what they did to him, or perhaps more accurately, what they probably didn't do to him. In other words, just letting him rot. But I'm honestly a little bit shocked he doesn't have to actually get implants at this point. Yes, more implants than he already has. I will also give credit to Mace Windu. Windu's usually portrayed as one of the more Jedi of the Jedis. And I do mean that as an insult. But he was absolutely willing to listen to Echo and hear his plan. So, okay, cool. We're going to go ahead. We're going to sneak on board the ship. This is a sneaking mission, Snake. So, no damaging anything. Okay, Wrecker? Cool. Now, I never... That's what I said to go to... And poor Wrecker. Oh, I hate that word. There's a tiny little tidbit I noticed, which I've actually been noticing this whole time, but this is a good time to bring it up. They keep calling the regular clones regs, which makes sense. They're regular clones, but actually, there's another military thing there. I don't know how true this is in other languages, but here in English, we usually refer to military regulars as regulars, or just regs. I don't know if that was deliberate, but it wouldn't surprise me if that was something that was done intentionally when it comes to the Bad Batch. Just little tidbit, little side things. There's a lot of little side things in here. And fortunately for them, the B-ones continue to be hilariously incompetent. Is this one of ours? It doesn't look like one of our ships. Ship changes right in front of him. Oh, yeah, it is one of ours. Everything's cool. I don't know what else to add to that. Roger. Is it any wonder the Separatists were never going to win? It's been stated in multiple works, both in the EU and the AU, that the only reason the Clone War went on as long as it was because Palpatine was going out of his way to make sure that the Republic didn't just run over the Separatists. You'd think the guys who can reproduce a disposable, mass-producible army would be on the winning side, but I digress. As much as I have derided the Y-Wings for many years, mostly because I can't stand flying in them, can I just say it's really nice to see Y-Wings in their prime? There's a fairly brief but really excellent combat sequence. It's our first naval engagement in this entire arc, actually. It's very, very short. Yeah, only 6 million clones. Oh my god. No, I've already got a headache. So, it's a nice naval battle. But again, the Y-Wings do exactly what they're supposed to do. Top of the line, fast precision bombers. Hell yes. Nice seeing that. And once again, that's not a member berry. That makes perfect sense. That is what I would call good fan service. First of all, if you're paying attention, the Y-wings are way more top tier, and you know, they look top of the line, right? They look polished, they look fresh off of the factory, as opposed to the rickety piles of crap that were in A New Hope. And they also do their job extremely well, which makes sense because they're specifically here to bomb something, which is what the Y-wing is. It's a frickin' bomber. So, I'm with it. I remember that mission. I remember that mission, Loner. That was a good mission. Anyways, so that was cool. That was cool. Neat little sequence. And I love the visual storytelling. On the off chance you hadn't figured out yet that Admiral Trench, who's a spider, is the bad guy, he literally has a scepter. He's got a scepter, everyone. I don't know what else to add to that. He's got a freaking scepter. No wonder the Separatists suck. There's a minor touch here. I actually like this. They don't even call this out. They just let it sit there. And once again, giving credence to the audience and letting the audience pick up on things as is. Because Trench would have known not to call in for the algorithm if he had known the issues that happened back on Skako. But Wat Tambor didn't call it in. You remember that? Wat Tambor was still of the mindset of, no need to report this until we have something to report. So he didn't. So Trench calls in for the algorithm, and that gives Echo the possibility of going ahead and laying the trap. It would affect their profits, after all. We got to keep those margins. Jesus Christ, Joe Pangolin, don't kill me! Yeah, I don't want us to add to that. It's just a nice little subtle point in the background, which once again emphasizes how the Separatists are terrible. It really is funny to me how much the Republic and the clone troopers and the Jedi are the good guys in this conflict. Not because they're good by any measure or concept, but because the people they're fighting against are so much worse. So, real talk, can I just say that when Mace Windu gets out there and gives his speech offering clemency to the droids, I was just like, yes! I was actually hoping at least some of the droids would take him up on the offer. Even his thing, I have personally disabled over 100,000 B1 battle droids. So if anybody wants to take up this offer, this is a good time to go ahead and lay down your swords, and I will reprogram you to something that isn't horrifically death to him. And of course they all open fire, so alright, so whatever. But it got me thinking. Droid effect is a real thing in Star Wars. They don't call it that. That's my term for it. But droids developing sentient and sapience over time, thanks to not having memory wipes, is a thing. It's a character point, a setting point, and a plot point, depending on where it's brought up. The whole reason they do the factory reset every now and again with the droids is to prevent that sentience from being developed, to set them back to factory standard, where they are functionally not sentient sapient beings, and can thus do their job better, because they're more pliant. Yes, that's exactly as horrible as it sounds, but that's not what I'm getting into right now. I was talking about this briefly in the previous episode about the gonk, but I find myself wondering how much, for lack of a better way to put it, AI, you know, real AI, not ChatGPT, is present when it comes to certain specific droids. Like, how sentient are the gonk? Because they really are just walking batteries, right? We know astromechs tend to have a decent amount of a brain on them because we have several examples of that. Same thing with protocol droids. But yeah, exactly. It feels like it might depend on the model. Now, here's another interesting thing, and I don't think I've ever really processed this before. A lot of the battle droids, specifically the B1s, that tend to present things like personality or reactions or whatever, are the kind that are manning a station somewhere, right? They are not actually on the front lines with a blaster shooting at the enemy. They are operatives, or agents, or officers, or otherwise personnel, workers, instead of fighters. And that's just something interesting to think about, because I find myself wondering if most of the B1s that are put out on the front lines, either deliberately or simply as a consequence, have more limiters on their CPU, or their processing, or their scripts, or whatever, right? So in other words, all they are is target and shoot. Hi, Evo. Thank you, Evo. So yeah, and keep in mind, we also see consistently that almost all of the battle droids of any model require external input to do anything other than point and shoot, right? They need even in episode 1, they needed the people up on the ship to actually be giving the orders to do things other than whatever previous order they were given, right? Exactly hazardous. So I find myself wondering if there's like individual droids which are allowed, battle droids which are allowed to not be factory reset more often, and thus they can develop some degree of sentience, and or they literally have a different processor in there or different programming in there which allows them to develop sentience and sapience like other droids do, whereas your typical frontline battle droid is only programmed to be able to aim and shoot. Food for thought, right? It's just something that's been bouncing around my head, because honestly, I find droids as a concept fascinating. I always have. And Star Wars does so little with them, relatively speaking. Like, oh, sure, there's a lot of cool droids, and indeed, pretty much every Star Wars movie trilogy has at least one beloved droid. But they don't really do a lot with the droids as a talking point. Anyways, I'm sorry, getting way off topic. I was just wondering, because the relevant point of the episode is I wonder if those poor little droids there up front can't take Mace Windu up on his offer. Like, they functionally do not have the ability to understand anything other than that is a target, shoot at it, right? And it was like someone mentioned earlier that the battle droids, the basic frontline battle droids, are chat GPT droids. You know, that they might not even be capable of undergoing droid effect. Food for thought. So we've got the trust issue thing, which is showing up, and blah, blah, blah. I love how pathetic Trench is. I really do. I really do. You see, when you are a truly wise and powerful leader, you will use your enemy against them. Now, Chauncey, go find the battle algorithm for me and tell me what my strategy is that I will then employ. Oh, do you have the strategy? Please implement the strategy. Oh, what? It was a trap all along? Destroy the entire planet. Like, and he's just so pathetic. And I would make fun, and I'm making fun, he's a pathetic villain. But the problem is so many of the Separatist leaders are just this, right? You could hot swap virtually any major Separatist leader with very few exceptions, and they're all the same. They're the typical aristocratic nonsense. If I could derail for just a second. You remember the Council of Piltover over in Arcane? No, of course you don't. But the point is, the Council were all elitist aristocrats, but they were all different flavors of it. You could clearly distinguish them one from another just by how they operated, how they reacted to things, how they pushed for things. And I liked that. I liked that even amongst the aristocratic elitist bullcrap that we were seeing there was some variety. Hints, you know, little hints of personality. Trench, there's nothing there. Alright, so, moving on. So, I know I'm an idiot. But I wonder if someday I could find someone who is intelligent enough and knowledgeable enough about engineering or physics or just power generation to explain to me why all the power generators in Star Wars are gigantic empty rooms. You ever notice that? I mean, this goes all the way back to A New Hope, functionally, but it really got started in Return of the Jedi, which has the nice, big, empty power room. This is in Rebels, this is in Clone Wars, a lot of the recent stuff does as well, as this big, empty, completely empty, too. Like there's a bunch of stuff on the walls, and then there's this colossal amount of space there where nothing's there. It's just, it makes me strange. I don't know why this is a thing. I mean, obviously, visual feedback and trying to follow through on the iconic showcasing that was presented in the original trilogy. But other than that, moving on. It is very visually Star Wars, and it does allow you to do the camera way out here, so that's something. Maybe it has, like, I don't know. Like I said, it's just something that struck me before. I remember when they go aboard Tarkin's ship in the first season of Rebels, and there's these giant open rooms aboard a ship, and I remember looking at that like, I was actually irritable by that, but again, moving on. So, I love how Windu is actually uniquely suited to disabling the bomb, because of course the bomb is ray shielded. But you can just reach past the shield and affect the buttons like that. Okay, sure, I'm with that. I also love how smug Trench is originally. In fact, actually, let's come back to Trench for a second. Let's shuffle over here. Let's talk about Wrecker. Let's have some fun for a second, because Wrecker sees a whole corridor of droids, and what's his reaction? He looks like he just saw a bunch of toys laid out in the hallway, and everyone's like, "Okay, here we go, here we go." Puts on his helmet, and then he just goes and he has fun, right? He just goes and he has fun for a few seconds. Here comes the wrecking ball, and can I just say, plus to story for that one scene alone, just for that one, it's only like 10 seconds long, but it's awesome. It is then immediately followed up by they're all running, and they're like, and there's this little dialogue they're having in the background where they're like, hang on, he's gonna try to one up him. There's no way, he's not gonna beat my score. It's fine, it's gonna do this. And they're going through, and then Crosshair is running through the corridor, throwing some things at the wall, and at first glance, as they're throwing stuff at the wall, it looks like it's those bombs he was using earlier in the arc. But when you get a closer look at them, they don't look like that. They look like some kind of weird mirror things. And then he lines it up, and he shoots the most absolutely insane trick shot in freaking fiction. Like, I'm exaggerating slightly. This is pretty much superhero levels of insanity of what he manages here, as he just shoots the shot and it just bounces through all of the droids with one shot, functionally. Don't worry, he'll top him next time. No, he won't. And again, I'm willing to let it go because it's awesome. And the way it's presented, and the way Wrecker reacts to it, and the way Crosshair reacts to it. And of course, the whole 4-episode arc has been establishing that Crosshair is crazy good with his sniper, so sure, you win. You win episode. I want to talk about Anakin briefly. So Anakin goes up to talk to Trench, and Trench is like, slurp, slurp, slurp. And then he sees Anakin. And Anakin's just like, hi. And I love how Trench's first reaction is to posture, and very, very quickly he realizes his situation and just starts backing up immediately, like, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap. You won't possibly do anything to me. You're a Jedi. Yeah, I don't have that weakness. Very specific word choice there. So, Anakin goes ahead and successfully gets the final code. Let's really analyze that sequence of events for a moment, because I think this is important, and I think it's brilliantly written. I've said for years that the Clone Wars show, the one we're still watching today, has done more to develop Anakin Skywalker as a character than the movies ever did. That we can actually see the very slow, subtle shift in his mentality and mood and mindset over here across the course of the Clone Wars, right? And yeah, Anakin turns into an actually good character in the Clone Wars, in the show. So this is another perfect example of that. He actually uses violence, slices off the guy's arms, and his comment about weakness and is willing to kill someone to accomplish what he has to do. And then that works. That's the interesting part, because that kind of creates a positive feedback loop, doesn't it? He was willing to do something that he arguably shouldn't have, something that would be considered morally and ethically questionable and unpleasant. We don't really care because it's being done to Mr. Sip 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 here, who's an evil aristocrat. But what he's doing is wrong. Like, we have to accept that on some level or another. What he's doing is at the very least questionable. And so as he's doing this, it succeeds. He successfully gets the code, sends it down, Mace Windu turns off the bomb, and they save countless lives and win the battle for the Republic. Positive feedback loop, or as it's more commonly referred to as a reinforcement loop. This leads to this, leads to this, leads to this. And obviously this is just like step 150 or so that he's been going through throughout the Clone Wars, but I do like that they've actually been continuing this particular feedback loop as he's going throughout the Clone Wars, as we're still getting to Season 7? That is a good question, Malachor. I don't know. I mean, Windu was just about to try on his own, if you remember. And then Anakin was like, no, I got this. And that's the interesting tidbit. We don't know if Windu could have disabled that bomb on his own. And Obi-Wan had been able to evacuate a decent number of the people. But we'll never know, because Anakin managed to do his own thing in his own way and got the answer quicker, easier. Then, to continue this particular path, when he's attacked by Trench, he just kills him. Thanks, Trench. And then he leaves. Now, I don't know if you know this, because what you're probably thinking in your mind is, why would I give a crap about the fact that he just killed this evil, manipulative, aristocratic asshole? Killing prisoners, especially prisoners of war, is kind of a tricky thing. You want to encourage the other side to be willing to peacefully surrender. You don't want to massacre the other side. Not unless they're like, you know, the Tyranids or something, or this is Warhammer 40k or whatever, right? Like, there's a reason that we want to, that once you have become a prisoner of war, it's hands off, right? Okay, you are now under certain legal protected status. You could take him as a prisoner. You could and taking as a prisoner, yeah, to quote is right. It escalates. Both sides start to escalate the moment you step over that line, right? I've actually talked about this concept a lot, especially in fiction, but this does apply in real life. Nobody really should step over that line, because the moment anybody does, that provides a problem and a potential escalation. You want Separatist leaders to be surrendering. You want them to be coming over to your side. You want to interrogate them. You want to get their information and resources. You want to remove them from a board in a way that doesn't involve the more cost in manpower and material. So, Anakin doesn't do any of that. Now, Blade Tervel points out, I don't think that was murder, and I agree with that. I don't think that was like murder. I think that was stab. You know, kind of a reactionary thing. But he clearly does not give a crap about what he just did. There's no moment where he obviously didn't want to do that and it was just a reaction. Instead, he's just like, okay, bye. And why would it bother him? He's Anakin. None of this is a complaint. This is awesome. This is great characterization for Anakin and why he's Anakin. Why should he feel bad about killing him? He's just Trench. Stab. But it shows the kind of person that Anakin is. This is great characterization. Yeah, Trench was just an obstacle in his way. He's already done with him, after all. And to continue doing good Anakin characterization, he really does care about his people. He really does actually give a crap enough to have a present for Wrecker. And I know that sounds like a minor thing, but keep in mind, Anakin paid attention enough and cared enough about the troops that just very recently entered his command. Like, what, like a few hours ago in lore? Or maybe it's been a day or two. It has not been a long period of time. And yet, despite that, he has still paid as much attention as he could to these people to learn their tricks and their tips and little bits about them, because he gives a crap. And so he knows Wrecker is the kind of person who wants this sort of thing. And therefore, it is Wrecker to whom he gives that option to blow it up. As a gift. Because that's Anakin. Both sides of Anakin are presented in the space of about 10 minutes. Actually, sorry, that's a huge exaggeration. It's probably closer to 5 minutes. I keep forgetting this is a 22, not a 44. So that's awesome. That is some great character moments there for Anakin Skywalker. And what I love about all of this... what I love about all of this is that it really is at its fundamental core a war story. This is something I talked about when we were covering Republic Commando not too long ago. It's really refreshing to see a solid war story that's mostly just about a battle for a particular planet or a particular sequence or whatever, but told competently and executed competently, so I give a crap about the events that are happening. A lot of people, especially writers, I've seen this a lot of times, here in the States, especially amongst the more literary circles, writers tend to snuff their nose, like they tend to look down their nose at war stories, because from their perspective, the way this is their words, not mine. From their perspective, the only reason to do a war story is if it's a background to the real story, right? You really want to focus in on the character drama. You want to focus in on how much the people have to make hard choices and all that. And you can do that, but the elitism is there, right? Because why would anybody be interested in just a story whose plot is so they move in, fight a battle, and then win? And those writers are idiots, because there's a lot to be said about a really good, well-executed, well-competently told war story. And it's actually pretty rare. It's extremely rare. It's one of the reasons, and I've said this before, that I gravitated so much to TIE Fighter, the game. Because TIE Fighter was a solid war story. It was actually several. And it was just refreshing to enjoy that, you know? Anyways, I apologize. I just wanted to comment on that because it was something that was sticking in my mind. Obviously, there's some good character stuff here for Rex, for Anakin, for the Bad Batch, for Echo. But this is a war story. This is the battle for an axis, and I'm with it. I also agree. Halo reached another example of that. Good stuff, good stuff. I love the Bad Batch themselves. I've been loving them since they first showed up. And I also have to admit, this whole time I was quietly hoping that Echo would join the Bad Batch. Remember, I haven't seen Bad Batch, the show. I'm walking into this pretty blind, actually. Somewhat deliberately, a little bit deliberately. So while I know a couple of things, distant little things, like I know there's a prison sequence in Andor, and I know certain things I'm not even going to say out loud about The Mandalorian, I'm walking in pretty blind, and so I didn't know Echo does join the Bad Batch. So when I see that, I was just like, yes! That was first reaction. Because it makes so much sense. Oh, sure, he doesn't have superpowers like they do. But he is one of the Bad Batch now, isn't he? I mean, they say it right in the episode, you don't follow the same path. And one of my favorite little tidbits there, yeah, exactly, Melikor. My brother-in-law literally gave me a cup with that person on it. No, don't donate towards the Bad Batch. Remember, we've paused Streamination funding. So you actually cannot fund Streaminations at the moment. Just heads up. Don't do that. Don't do that. Lost my train of thought. Echo isn't a reg anymore. And I feel for him tremendously, and I hope he gets some really good stuff over on Bad Batch, which hopefully someday I'll actually get an opportunity to watch. I think that's actually everything. This is a solid episode. I was really worried it was going to trip at the finish line with all of the fake drama around Echo. Is he secretly against us? Is he really loyal to the Separatists? And I wasn't super afraid of that because A, this has been a good show, but also B, they kept calling it loyal to the Separatists. And I know that sounds like a weird thing to point out, but yes, I did, Spartan. If they were going to actually have him be like reprogrammed or mind altered or whatever, I think that they would have phrased it differently. Rather than you're loyal to the Separatists, which is nonsense and stupid, instead of being more like along the lines of, I wonder if you've been reprogrammed, or I wonder if you don't even know your own loyalties, or something like that. But instead, the sheer fact that they specifically pointed towards you're loyal to the Separatists pretty much immediately gave away that he wasn't. And keep in mind, I wasn't sure because I didn't know that Echo is on the Bad Batch show. Food for thought. I'm thinking red. Good culmination, good character stuff, great character stuff, actually. Sticks the landing, sets off the Bad Batch show. Yeah, no, I think we have hit our first red episode. I'm feeling it. And I do think the whole arc probably qualifies as red. I know we're not really reviewing that in the strictest sense, but I do think that if we were, I would easily be willing to give this arc a red qualification because this was solid. I really only have one large complaint. Everything else is just nitpicks throughout the entire arc. It's a really solid, competently told war story with great characterization and great development that helps change the status quo in a fairly large way. And that's the other interesting thing, because even though the battle is just another battle of the Clone Wars, there's a lot of moving pieces here that I know will come up in future stuff, either in other movies or other shows or whatever. And yeah, it clearly sets up the Bad Batch episodes, which I'm going to presume means that this stuff will be carried forward in the Bad Batch show, which I have no idea. Is that still going, by the way, or has that been discontinued? Has that reached its conclusory point? I could see that point, Uthor. I do still think that's elitism, but I could still see that point. Okay, so Bad Batch has concluded. So that means, and this is with a total lack of information. I know nothing about the Bad Batch, but I'm guessing it leads immediately into the Rebel Alliance. Am I right? Possibly literally leading into Rebels, the show. Because that would be logical, right? Like if you're probably thinking, huh? Over here, we've got, well, episode 2, actually. And then we've got the Clone Wars, and then we've got episode 3. And then there is a bit of a gap there. Even now, there's a bit of a gap there. And then we've got Rebels. And then Rebels leads into Rogue One, which leads into the events of the original trilogy. But it does sound like I'm wrong. I'm actually surprised by that. I wonder if they're going to keep going with that. Because we do have Rebels there. But that sounds like there's still a gap in between Bad Batch and Rebels. Huh. Food for thought. Anyways, so, sorry, Act, you asked a question. What are the color ranges of the games' golden number system? I'm sorry. Let me come back to that. Some of you may have noticed really quick here. Really, Rax? We'll get to that at some point, I'm sure. Really quick, I added another qualifier there. It's not finished yet. In fact, I plan to try and have a visual indicator of when it is finished. But if you'll notice on the spreadsheet now, I've got a percentage quality thing in the upper right. The idea there is that once we've actually finished an entire show, we can see what its score is versus what its highest possible score is. And the point is that percentage is technically the more accurate score for the episode, or for the franchise, for the show that we're watching, right? In other words, Arcane, I'll use Arcane as a specific example, has the max possible of 54. So if it gets 54, then it's 100%, and that's the best possible score it could have gotten. And if it gets like 20%, then that's terrible, right? You get the idea. Just another little metric because I cannot stop loving data. So I'm going to go ahead and chop off the local recording.